All right, let's do this thing. Let's dive into this. So welcome everybody watching. We got Drew straight off the plane into Dallas, Texas. And you know the deal. Immediately I wanted to throw him into a cool down. So those are new viewers. Long story short, these cool downs were birthed at the racetrack after a long day of drifting when the car's cooling down and the homies are just chatting. So that's all this is. Super simple. Drew was here in Texas the other month or two. And when you had went home, I realized, dang, there's a lot of cool conversations and, you know, kind of some real drift history. So I'm going to toss out, obviously, OMG Drift as myself, younger, going into Formula Drift, meeting you through the industry. And now we're full circle. We're working together again. And
for sure. Shout out Tire Streets,
Shout out to Tire Streets. And so we got Drew in the house. So
hi, guys. What's up, YouTube?
So, Drew, tell us a little bit. I wanted to ask first and foremost, like, your history, you getting into drifting. Like, tell me about before OMG Drift. Like, were you just a car nerd? Like, what's your connection to drift?
Yeah, so I was like a photography video nerd, and then all my friends eventually got into cars. And I was like kind of into cars, but not really. I was like Need for Speed Underground, that type of thing. And like my first car was a 98 Ford Contour. My first modification was 8-ball flame seat covers.
Sick.
Took them off before I could drive it. And then I got a system with it too. It was really bad. But yeah, all my friends that like I were getting more into like cars, like specifically like street drags and stuff like that, like Eclipses and DSMs, that type sort of thing. And then all of those people sold their cars.
Well, real quick too, where did you grow up?
Los Angeles.
Okay, so this is in Southern California.
Yeah, born and raised.
Cool.
So I was born in the Antelope Valley, and then 6, 7 years old, moved to the San Fernando Valley.
Nice.
So yeah, been a Valley kid my whole life. Yeah.
So it's kind of like you're into cars because you're around a community of kids that were into cars loosely.
Yeah.
And then when did you learn about like using a car for sport?
Yeah, I mean, like the first time that I had any like sense of like drifting like in person was in Porter Ranch, which is Northridge became Porter Ranch, or at least like a nice part of Porter Ranch. We had these car meets, and we would always hang out in front of the In-N-Out, and somebody came by in a 2-tone coupe and was drifting in the Best Buy parking lot. And I was like, damn, that's super cool. And for everybody that was there, it was like everybody's bug immediately. Everybody was like, what was that? What is drifting? And then everybody within 2 months sold their cars, and everybody bought like a 240.
Damn, they had to give up the food trays with the e-brake on?
Yep, for sure, for sure.
I remember doing that as a kid when I was younger.
I remember getting some people at Hoonigan to do that. Yeah.
Dude, Ford Focus, lock the rear wheel with the trays under them from Taco Bell.
Oh, yeah.
Well, cool. So then, and if I'm remembering correctly, you yourself never really drifted, right? You just covered.
I did a couple like driving schools when I was kind of coming up and trying to find my place. There were places I was working with that offered these courses, but this was like pre-OMG Drift, and this was just like, hey, we can't afford to pay you, but we can give you like laps in a supercar, we can give you like drifting lessons, stuff like that. So I have like minimal experience. I had an S14 for 3 months and then did nothing with it. Like we had big plans for it. It was gonna be like a cross-country tour vehicle.
Gotcha.
And just sold it immediately.
Step one, sell it.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, let's flash forward into. So I'll give a little bit of background on my version of this. So I'm going into Formula Drift. I'm starting to kind of see, obviously, I guess I should say prior to Formula Drift, like I knew of OMG Drift.
Yeah.
And the way that I visually seen it was just like almost like a breaking news. Like I remember going on a forum and finding you guys and going to the site and seeing you guys feature all the drivers and Forrest Wang, and like it was like the true story of drifting is how I felt you guys translated. But beyond all that, but give me the roots of OMG Drift. How did it start? Who was with you? Like, what is it?
Sure, yeah. So the initial, I eventually, when I found out about drifting and wanted to take it more seriously, I went to Adams Motorsport Park because they had Thursday night drift, and I went to like the 3rd or 4th one they ever did. Through that, I met Ross Fairfield, and eventually he asked me, oh, you're going to go to Formula Drift Long Beach? And I didn't know what Formula Drift was, and I was like, no.
What year is this?
2008, going into 2009.
Got you.
Because my first season of Formula Drift was 2009.
So you were going to Adams, but you didn't even know about Irwindale.
No
or
sense.
Long Beach.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, none of it. Yeah.
Dang.
I didn't know what Formula Drift was. For me, it was like, I think in that time of the internet, like obviously we were all online, but like not to the degree that we are now. But I was like, okay, of drifting, I know there's one car, and it's either a coupe or it's a hatch, and there's nothing else, you know? That's what all my friends had, you know? It was either a coupe or a hatch, always an S13.
Right.
So like I had no sense of it. But yeah, beyond that, I was like, okay, well I want to shoot professional drifting now that I know what it is. And I didn't even know like the sports lenses, you know, like the 7200s, all that. No idea what those were. So I literally Googled white sports lens. And when I saw that, because I got approved for Formula Drift through Everything Drift, because Ross got me connected with George Garcia from Everything Drift, and shot Long Beach, and I was hooked. Bought the nicer camera, bought the nice lens, flew to Atlanta a month later, did that. Couldn't afford Jersey, skipped Jersey, and I did, I think, 5 of the 7 rounds or whatever was in there.
Yeah, but when you were going to those drifting events for the first time,
Yeah.
Did you think to yourself like, holy shit, I know exactly what I'm about to do and I'm going to turn it into OMG Drift? Or were you showing up and you were just like, I'm shooting stuff?
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
So I'll say this. I've never been like in a big like here's my 5-year plan, here's my 10-year plan. I'm barely a 1-year plan. Now I'm definitely more in that space where I'm trying to plan more and plan for the future now that I'm 34. But yeah, no, then it was just like, I'm going to shoot this, and as long as I have access to these events, I'm gonna be at those events. That's what I want to do. And then George Garcia, he just wasn't sure if he was going to be able to do Everything Drift. And my association with drifting and professional drifting was, okay, well, if you want to go shoot this, you need a media outlet. And I didn't want to talk to anybody, so I was like, oh, it seems simple. Create a media outlet. So I called up Ross Fairfield and I said, hey, I want to do this media thing. Didn't have a name. And I kind of looked to what everybody else was doing at the time. And then it like wasn't a big content space. It was like Wrecked Magazine, Speed Hunters, Motor Mavens, like drifting.com. I don't know if Drifted was up yet. And I started to base the identity of OMG Drift off of what everybody else was doing. So the initial colors for the website were like black, red, yellow, all these.
Hunter,
Speed Hunters. Yeah, Speed Hunters, Motor Mavens. And eventually, I didn't know what the website name was yet, but we were going through like our WordPress themes, and one of the colors was purple, and I was like, oh, purple's actually kind of sick. And then I was like, you know what's sick with purple? Lime green. So we like picked the right lime green, and then eventually, dude, I was literally at like a Baja Fresh with my ex-girlfriend. And out of nowhere, I was like, OMG Drift.
Dang.
Yeah, there wasn't like it didn't come to me. I was literally eating like a California burrito.
What did that represent to you? Like, you're just like...
I just thought it was fun.
Yeah.
I just was like, once OMG Drift came through, I was like, oh, okay, like, I feel like our vibe's fun. Like, we still want to report on the news, and while I'm working on getting an archive back up of the site.
But it works like... visually and in text, like it makes sense because it feels to me like I read it as like, holy shit, something important's happening. Yeah. It's like OMG Drift,
for sure. I the moment I realized it worked is I was coming back from All-Star Bash and I had the ASB whatever shirt on that had OMG Drift on the back of it, and there was like 14 sponsors on the back, and I'm washing my hands at like an In-N-Out in Gardena. And this guy goes, oh my God, Drift, because like when you're in a car and you're like, oh my God. And I'm like, yeah, for sure. Like he didn't know who I was. He had no association, but he went through the whole list of people on the back and picked me out. So yeah, exactly.
Dude, exactly. I didn't even think about it like that. Yeah. Like I keep thinking of it as the press. Like,
right.
Like here comes the next newest news.
For sure.
I didn't even think about it like as a passenger or a driver being like, oh my God, drifting.
Yeah, for sure.
Dang, so it works both ways.
But for me, it was also, none of it was ever that deep. I was just like, I need a name. and I think like the initial names were like Asphalt Chasers or stuff like you're really trying to find the Speed Hunters.
Detail.
Yeah. And like none of it was good. And for me, like I think like a lot of it's all in a name, I think like a good name would take you so far.
It's a brand.
Yeah.
Well then,
sure. But then it was just a blog. Like I never had any plans for any of it. It was literally like, I just need credentials, and like I have no other plans beyond that.
Whoa, I see. So it was just your stamp to get in, to go to the race, to do whatever you were going to just do that weekend, not thinking too deep about it.
I don't think at any point, like Ross and I were very, very happy with the way the website launched and the initial reception. But I don't know if at any point we were ever like, oh, we're going to kill the game. We're going to like change shit. Like, we got this.
Well, let's talk about that. So like I'm just going to think out loud. So it's like, so did you do a year of running around just like Vogue, or were you like, did you have a demand of people going, when's the next article? And you guys had even like a like blog, like you said, like people were tuning in and commenting and giving their feedback on those posts.
Yeah, blogs were big then. Yeah.
Well, so what drove the next chapter of it? What was the second, like how did it grow? Well,
so the initial setup, so Ross was way more connected than I was, because Ross, I think, filmed for Takatori the previous year and just was like very in the scene. And I definitely was not like in the scene to that degree. I always, even to this day, still like very much feel like an outlier in the scene. I don't know why that is. We can get into that in another episode. Yeah. Wait, shit.
Yeah. So we were
getting back on track.
We were saying like, you found the name.
Yeah.
You were going to the races. Yeah. You're going to Formula Drift. You know, you had your credentials now.
Oh yeah. So
then the community started fucking with you guys. So like.
So on our first day, I think we had like 700 hits on the site, which I was like so stoked about. I know like Ryan Turk shared it, but we had like, I was like, okay, well if we're gonna launch, we should have a couple things lined up. So we had like a Team Mulsanne feature lined up. We had like a Nico Gunther lined up. We had a Jimmy Up like video interview lined up. We had a few things that were going to go out over the next couple weeks and just like get kind of pushed around the Southern California scene. And then eventually the growth was from people being like, oh, I want to give you guys shit to put out there. Like, I have cool drivers in my area. I go to events in my area. Like, let us show you East Coast drifting, Texas drifting, Canada drifting, and then eventually it became like a global thing.
God, that's cool.
Yeah.
Were you guys selective at that time? Like, were you keeping any sort of original content, or were you just like, whoa, the Texas boys or the East Coast boys or whoever wanted to send us stuff, so like, let's accept it? Did you go like, hi?
It's hard to say, because people would come to us with content a lot. Some of it was just like, well, I just don't know if like the coverage or the writing fits the vibe. There's other people who were just like, at one point we had like a staff sidebar, and I think there was like 35 people on there. But it was like all staff, because like I wasn't making money, Ross wasn't making money, like everything was unpaid. We had one advertiser ever, and it was just like a complete like money dump. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So the business of it,
yeah.
So mentioning staff, did you employees, people that were involved in it? Like, who is OMG Drift? Just you?
I mean, it's myself and like Ross Fairfield.
Ross, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then like we have a bunch of people that like, but like it still was like never like established. Like it was established to a degree.
Yeah.
But like there was no employees. There was like nothing behind it. We were just like a bunch of people with a blog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So then let's talk about some like highlights that you can remember from OMG Drift. Like, what was a moment where you were just like, whoa, this random thing that we created that I wanted to just go to these events. Now I'm, you know, when you have those moments where you're like, sure, I'm doing this now? Like, can you think of any in your head? Like
the first one that comes to mind is like a Forza Motorsport 4 launch party.
Damn.
Yeah, that was cool. There was just moments in there where like I felt like we were like really doing it. Like I introduced myself to Rod Chong of Speed Hunters fame, and I had kind of heard that like people were like kind of being like, well, why are they everywhere? Like what's going on? And I went up to Rod and I introduced myself and I said, hey Rod, I just want to introduce myself. I have like this small blog called OMG Drift. And he went, yeah, small. And like that was one of those moments where I was like, oh, okay, I think we're actually like doing something here. That's cool. That's cool.
Dang.
But for me, like even to this day, even when, you know, it's like our Facebook at one point was like reaching like 1 million people a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez, man.
And that was like from a real collective effort of like Nick Quigley came up with like these car polls. Like this was like, I mean, it was like a really like a new media idea at the time, was like pitting things against each other to like create engagement, and like everybody was like really putting in a lot of effort on those types of things. But
okay, so then the timeline continues to where you kind of reach like a peak, or you kind of reach a moment where you know, and I feel that at times too. So to relate, it's like
Yeah.
when you want to do something because you love it, your head's down, you're working hard, and a lot of times you're not really focused on the reward.
Sure. Yeah.
And then you do get those moments where either industry icons mention you and like give you props and like you're kind of like, wow, I should probably lay down and give myself some credit sometimes.
Right,
you know what I mean?
For sure.
And then time passed and OMG Drift is now gone.
Yeah.
Like, is it something that can like be gone forever? Is it just dormant? Is there futures for it? Like, is there?
No, there's no futures for it. So every so often I try to bring it back, or I'll think about bringing it back, or I'll do a version of it, or I'll convince myself it's a good idea. I think OMG Drift did everything it could have ever possibly done, and then some. Because at the time when we were reaching, 1 million people a week, I was living in my mom's house with like a shelf stacked with like shirts from OMG Drift that we were like selling and shipping out. Like we were just figuring it out as we went. I kind of felt like, that I did everything, we did everything, and we tried a few versions of it that were all like, they're all fine. Mm-hmm. But to kind of create that like big impact that you want to create when you've had something that was huge, I feel like nothing kind of compares to it, I
feel that too, man. Like my career seems to have that same kind of timeline sometimes where it was like when I was younger, I had a lot of opportunity and I had a lot of, friends that were trying to like guide, like I always feel like I was raised by Forsberg and Vaughn and DA and like I was right under that chapter and me and Denofa were battling and it was like, I feel like it's hard to overcome those moments. Like those moments were so iconic.
Right.
It's like even recreating some of the moments we're in now don't feel the same. Right. Not that they're less creditable or anything, but it's like, I know what you mean there.
Right.
So
you're like, you had this huge moment and like all these other moments kind of like don't compare to it. And for me, I think I have some friends that I think kind of like are like, oh man, those were like the best times ever. I would do anything to go back. And like for me, I'm like cool on it. I'm like really happy that I was there when I was there.
Something on that point that I always think about is like, so when I used to skateboard, it was like I remember a quick story here.
Please.
I was at a skate park and a skate team was there. And my friend
What team was it?
So this was called KKSM. Okay. So it was super old school, very like small community. Yeah. But they were touring and they were going to Arizona and like just a few places. And so I happened to go to the skate park that night and my friend was like, come with us. And I was like, the only way I'm going to be able to go to Arizona right now is if we all go to my mom's house. I'm going to knock on the door and we're just going to walk in and tell her I'm leaving. And we did it. Yeah. And the point of the story is the mystery of not knowing where I was going was so cool. Yeah. And I remember, for example, to parallel, I was driving through Park City, Utah, and I'm like, Jared, what do you eat? I was like, Jared DeAnda, what do you eat in Park City, Utah? Yeah. And he said, Kim Block's going to call you, answer the phone. Damn. Kim Block calls me, I answered the phone, meet him at the steakhouse, go to his house, blah, 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 right? Yeah. So the mystery of not knowing what's about to happen for me was some of the heaviest memories that I carry. For sure. Nowadays, we have to plan and forecast so heavily that some of that mystery is lost. And maybe that's what we're saying in some of it.
No, it's definitely a part of it. And I also like on like the idea of like traveling and like kind of just going wherever. Like I remember going cross country with Ross and we're pulling into Nashville and my debit card's like 200 in the negative. Ross also doesn't have any money. And I'm calling my dad and I'm like, Dad, I know you don't have any money, but can you PayPal me $35 so we can fill this up, get to where we need to go, sell all the shirts that are currently in the element, and then make enough money to drive to the next event.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude, that's really cool though.
Yeah. And I mean, all of that's like super fun. With that being said, I remember like, oh, if I'm gonna go to Texas, okay, it's like a day and a half, 2-day drive, blah, blah, blah. It's really nice to be able to get on a flight, sit there for 3 hours, show up, hang out, not be fatigued. Yeah. So I think kind of the growing up in the space, like there's like a lot of benefits to it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. So then I guess getting back on track here, folks, what was the time period where you were like, all right, cool, I'm gonna step away from OMG Drift and just like allow myself to adventure into other things? Or like, how was that? I know for me in Formula Drift and when I had to step away, it wasn't a very smooth, like I wasn't stoked. Right. So were you burnt out of OMG?
Yeah, I was super burnt. I was tired of dealing with like making sure photographers were doing things. So, like, we weren't paying anybody. I wasn't paying myself. Like, nobody's making any money. So, like, I can't expect things of anybody. But in order for us to, like, be socially successful, because that's all we were, was socially successful, everything burned me out. Like, I didn't like doing merchandise. I thought we put out, like, cool shirts and stickers, but I didn't like doing any of that. So eventually I kind of looked at it and was like, I don't like anything that I'm doing. I don't like being in this space. Myself and money have never been like, it's never been the goal for me. And you know, if I had structured differently, I'm sure I could probably still be doing Omji Drift and slinging stickers. But yeah, I just got burned out. I was kind of just, at a certain point, I was just over it, like completely over it.
I feel that, dude.
Yeah.
I feel that. I'm trying to take a note from that and try to, I guess you'd say, like, delegate.
Yeah.
You know, it's like when I find myself not being super interested in a certain process of whatever I've created, I'm like, damn, that just means I need to put someone in place. Just what I've learned. But
for sure, I think that's part of it. Also, for me, one of those things, I practiced like a couple like exercises. One of those, just I'd like to reflect on, like, how would I feel, younger me, how would I feel about this? And also just like, I try to like take in moments of gratitude. I try to look at where I'm at, you know, even if I'm sitting on the floor, shooting whatever out there, and just sitting there and taking in the moment and kind of seeing what everything that's happening in there, just like being like, this is great, this is really good. I don't know if that would have saved Omji Drift.
Right.
But for the future, it helps a lot to be like, getting ice cream is great. Getting ice cream with your friends is great.
Yeah.
Shooting cars is amazing. Having opportunities to be able to travel and see friends and see people I've known for so long and be able to keep that up is like, I'm just so grateful for it.
And speaking of, let's talk a little bit about like drifting in 2010 versus drifting in 2020 and all of the, you know, things you've seen looking at drifting and publishing drifting, and like, what's your thoughts on like when we were in 2014 Formula Drift versus 2024 coming up? Like, what do you think about drifting?
That's such a big question, right?
Yeah.
I still think drifting is the best thing in the world. I love the community that surrounds it. I think I'm less connected, and I've been working on becoming more connected with like the everyday person who's into drifting and the everyday driver, because I think I just am a little more disconnected than I would like to be with it. I think drifting's in a great place. Unfortunately, I feel bad for new kids getting into it, because I think we're at a place where it's like kind of infinitely more expensive to get into it than it was. I think at a certain point it was like, cool, you can collect S13s, S14s, and swap parts between them and drive them into the ground. And now it's like, you know, I see them for sale in my area for $15,000, $16,000.
Yeah. The bar of entry is super high right now in the sport.
Yeah, which is a bummer, because I think that was one of the, like, everybody that was going to the track was broke. You know, and now it's like you got to kind of have it a little bit, or have your shit together, or have some additional family support, which there's nothing wrong with, like, whatsoever. I know people clown on people with family support. That's great. If your parents can support you in that, run that for the rest of your life.
Yeah, dude. And there's also a lot of motorsports out there, whether it be motocross or, you know, supercross. Like, those kids start riding bikes before they can remember life.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So, like, families building motorsport careers with kids is, like, in my opinion, a huge blessing.
Yeah, it's sick.
My parents, I remember my dad specifically would have to come save me from street drifting because I would run into a pole, literally. And he's like, what are you doing? You know? And then he will come to the races. And then from there, it was like, oh, Nate's dad raced him drifting, where my dad did not know about drifting at all. So it's like, I was super proud to have my family at the races. But I know what you mean. It can be looked at like, well, your parents are here. It's like, I don't know, man. I'm just a skateboarder from a fucking suburb. And they're like, damn, you're drifting. So
yeah, you have supportive family. Which
is
nice.
But I don't think it will ever go backwards from here.
No, definitely not. I think the builds will continue to get crazier. Formula Drift will continue to like just be the beast that it is. I'm hoping to get like some other series over here just for fun. But like, it's cool to see like DMAC and like LZ World Tour and like everybody that's just like really doing it. People that have like legitimate careers, because before it was like 6 people make a living from drifting when I was growing up, and now it's hundreds.
It's so cool.
If not more than that.
It's so cool. And like the tour stuff we're doing, it's like, just, it works. It works. But what do you think about the shootout stuff? Like all the one-offs, like, you think those are kind of like maybe because obviously the business back end of it is it should make money.
Yeah.
Because it's rare and they pay out big money.
Yeah.
But like, do you think those are popping up because of money? Do you think those are popping up because of like clutch kickers doing the $100,000 drift series, but that was more of an actual championship you could win?
Right.
Like, what do you think about the current like state of not pro drifting?
Sure. Yeah. Sometimes I get bummed out with the shootouts because, and I get it, because like if you're racing is expensive. You have to make your money. Go to it, go do it. Especially like if someone who's been in some shootouts and holds a couple titles wants to go, you know?
Come on.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's in a weird place. I think the nice thing about drifting is I think people will try to be like, oh, like grassroots drifting's the way, professional drifting's the way, semi-pro's the way. Like, I think it can all exist perfectly. I
had a pretty interesting experience, and I mean this with all the love and respect, and it was, this season's been crazy for me. So I went to the, we had won the Englishtown LZ World Tour, and we won a trip to the next round, right? We won a trip to Ireland. Yep. So I went to Ireland, and I'm sitting with James Dean and Denofa and Adam and just the Grants and Jimmy. I'm sitting with the boys, you know, and we're having the most fun at Mondello Park. And the following weekend, I was scheduled to be at the North Dakota 10K drift event, and I show up to that drivers meeting, and it was so like to the T. Like, they were very serious. It was for $10,000. It was like rule book questions in the drivers meetings. Right. And I remember thinking, damn, dude, I was just over here, and it was super loose.
Having the time of your life.
It just was loose and kind of, you know, flowing. And then I went to a shootout that I'd been to and won twice before, and I had just realized kind of how straightforward it was. And I found myself having a little less fun than I thought I would there. And so
I think when like so much money is on the line, and like so many people there are like, if I just win this amount of money, I can fund my program. So they're going to be like really on the rules, ask as many questions as possible, and then maybe have like way less fun with it, you know?
Yeah, but that's what I've noticed. Like, when I was drifting from pro shit in 14 to 17, breaking off in 18 to start my printing, and then 19 kind of coming back into grassroots drifting, it was like, I remember when everybody from Forsberg to Vaughn to Ryan to Tony Angelo was like, this is the hotel we're staying at. Right. And it was like, we were going to the same race, and we were going to party at the hotel. Yeah. You know all that.
Of course.
And it's like, now, with the money being the subject matter, it seems to be deleting the
camaraderie,
hotel vibes. Yeah, you know what I mean? So
for sure, and I think that's a huge loss. I mean, I couldn't tell you a lot of the drift events I went to, but like, I remember blacking out at No Coast. You know. So I mean, and that's like the whole reason I like want to be in this. It's a reason I continue to find a job that allowed me to see the same people I've been seeing for the last 10 years. Is because like I love the people that I've been lucky enough to share a space with, you know.
Yeah, dude.
So I think like maybe everyone doesn't need to like. I'm thinking of a particular hotel in Irwindale that got like fire marshaled and 2 elevators broken in, and
I was there.
Yeah,
I was there. Yeah. That was so fun.
Yeah, and those moments are very fun, and I wish there was more of a middle ground. I wish people took drifting a little less serious, you know. I think we're back on that like keep drifting fun movement again, you know, where people are maybe taking things a little too serious. It's all about the money, all about winning, and like there's just like so much more to it than that.
Yeah, and I think for even myself, like I had to learn a fair amount about business and how to propose what I needed to get done because I was hungry. And so to everyone like listening, the other side of the coin we're talking about is you're out there and you want to drift, and you also realize that you want to feed your family. And so I'm going to go to the 10K event and I'm going to try to win because I'm trying to feed my family.
Right.
So no disrespect to everyone trying to win those shootouts. Like,
yeah, oh, for sure.
But it's just that vibe of like, before all of that, it was about try to win the comp, but also really the community and helping each other was what you really remembered out of all of that.
But also in those early years, there was just no money on the table.
Really?
There was 6 people making money, period.
And to your point, it also took 40% less to do it.
Yeah.
Like Nate could drive from Texas with 12 tires and go to Formula Drift and like make it happen in an S13.
Yep.
I would lose in 32.
Sure.
I remember when it was 72 people.
Yeah.
If you made the top 64, you were on one. 32 was crazy. 16 was like...
I remember there being like 65, 67 drivers to qualify and it was just the worst time ever. I mean, it was fun.
Yeah.
But for someone that was shooting it, I was like, damn, this sucks.
How am I gonna break all this content out?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Good conversations. I'm trying to think about like, what are you up to today? Like, what do you do? What are you up to now, right? Like,
yeah. So now I work for a company called Tire Streets. I am their social media manager, but like that basically means I create the content and schedule all of our social media stuff, community support, like talking to people on our social channels and stuff like that, and just trying to build a better community around Tire Streets and working with Accelera and stuff like that.
Is it filling the void? Like, you feeling like you got some vibes of OMG Drift, but not all the responsibility? Like, does it feel?
Yeah, I mean, so it's a little interesting because with OMG Drift, there were no stakes. If something sucked, it flopped, it didn't matter. Now, if an idea I have completely flops, I have to report on that,
The analytics come back.
Yeah, for sure. And we're in such like an analytics-driven place now where like content, you kind of need it to do well, and unfortunately, like you're up against algorithms. But I have stuff that I made that I was like, oh, this shit's gonna pop off, and it flops, And so it's learning to adjust, and you say, okay, Tire Streets is not OMG Drift, so what's the middle ground where I still love the stuff I put out, or love 50-60% of the stuff I put out, while still trying to create something that people care about,
Well, I've been with Accelera and Tire Streets for obviously like 4+ years now.
Yeah.
So I can tell when you have started to join the company, like I can see the media growing.
Yeah.
Like, and maybe not with the algorithm or the time of post or the reach of the post,
Sure.
but I can see that we're speaking to the core audience and
Right.
we're caring about the content we put out. So
Right.
like, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It is my pleasure. I love, at the end of the day, like one of my favorite things to do is just create content and be able to put out cool photos and video and stuff that's fun, stuff that people like really get to enjoy. And the nice thing about Tire Streets is like, one, it's a legitimately great place to work. I'm not just saying that, though. Like, work-life balance is incredible, and I get to travel, you know. And like when we want to come out and film with you, we can tell our company, "Hey, we want to come do this," and they're like, "Cool, yeah, sounds good."
Yeah.
You give them a content plan, they like trust you. It's really nice.
That is super cool, and like that's why we're sitting here today.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, which is the full circle moment for me. It's like met you through drifting, back at it now, and it just means a lot to have you here too. So that's cool. Man.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, dude. Well, I don't know. Anything else you want to say, or?
I don't know if I seemed at all apprehensive in this. I don't like talking about myself.
Before we got on camera, we basically were doing this, and I was like,
we were just like sitting on the floor. Yeah.
I was like, Drew, come on, dude. Let's just share some of this knowledge with the community. But well, thanks for your background on OMG, and
of course.
like I know there's a lot of people watching that relate to that time period, and so it's cool to hear from you.
Of course. And if you ever want to have a more concise or more focused talk about OMG Drift and all that stuff, I'm always happy to do this again.
His phone number is.
Yeah, I know, right? Follow Tire Streets.
Yeah.
And follow my personal account if you feel like it. I care less about that.
Throw it out there, dude.
Drew Fishbein. Hopefully we can put that
Tito
in.
got that.
Yeah,
Tito got that.
Tito got it for sure. That's all I got. Shout out Carly. I love you and I miss you.
Boom. All right, Drew. Thanks for it.